So Gary, thank you for being on Automating Success. I'm Joe Langton. It's my beautiful daughter, Julia Langton. And I'm going to start off straight up by saying, you may not know this, but you are the inspiration to us doing this podcast. I love your Ditch Digger CEO podcast. Absolutely love it. And as I listened to it, and since I became a part of True Mentors, which is another great organization that you started, I've had so many people tell me I'm like a young Gary Rabine. I thought, I'm sure if today's Gary Rabine could be doing a podcast at 41, he would have been. So I'm going to hop on and I'm going to do it. So I've never had a chance to tell you this before, but it's important for you to know this. And so you've inspired me.
Awesome. I appreciate that, buddy. That's my goal. That's my whole goal of my podcast is not, I'm about making money. I run businesses to make money, right? That's what we do. But as you get a little later in life, you'll find out 15, 20 years from now, you say, okay, man, I've had some great success. I've had fun. Now what can I do to make sure other people can enjoy this American dream that you live, right? And I don't think there's enough of us that do that. But I think it's something that we have to be conscious of. We have to be conscious of this American dream isn't everywhere, right? It's called American dream because it's only here.
Absolutely. Yep.
There's no other country you can go to and enjoy this potential success through hard work that you can enjoy in America. So my thing is to create awareness that, hey, number one, entrepreneurship is accessible to everybody. And then number two, continue to protect this great free enterprise system we have, because it can go way fast. I mean, if we aren't conscious of what it takes to be a free country and a free enterprise-driven country, it'll go fast because there's a lot of people that are envious over success. A lot of people that don't understand that it's accessible to everybody. It's not limited. So again, that's why I do it. I want to inspire more people to understand why entrepreneurship is so much fun, and then why this country is so great. And the big thing is, man, hold on to it and fight against it. Young people like Julia, man, Julia's future it can be great. And with you as a father, mentor, and all the great people she's going to be around, and at a young age that she is, to be a leader in a business is awesome. It's a cool thing. And in America, her success will be it'll be imminent, right? Whether she has little failures here and there, as long as she has your work ethic, she's going to be a success in America. Now, if America turns into a country like Venezuela that was like us, one of the richest countries in the world only 20 years ago, and turns into, if America follows their platform of equalization of everything, and everybody deserves free stuff, and you don't have to work anymore because the country's going to take care of you, right? If America falls into that, Julia would be looking at oh my gosh, what happened, right? Why didn't I get involved? How did this happen to America? Okay, so again, my thing is, why I do mine is to inspire entrepreneurship and people to understand it's abundant. Entrepreneurship is abundant, and we can serve not only our communities, our country, but the rest of the world with great innovation that we are part of here in America. But that all goes away in a socialist environment, and that's the thing I lose sleep at night over, right? So for me, I want to inspire more people.
To expand on that, one of the things that I think gets overlooked is, work ethic. One of the things that you brought up, you said, if she has my work ethic, she'll be successful, and it's one of the things that I think we're going to get into it as I really start to get into the interview with you. But one of the things that I feel blessed being an entrepreneur is to be able to work with my kids and let them work around my work ethic and learn that work ethic so it actually gets passed down. It's something that I feel so blessed with owning my own businesses like you do, and being able to figure out, which one of my kids is going to run with a certain business, which is something you're doing also. Because this is another thing that only in this country can you plan for that with your kids, and be able to teach a work ethic, which this is something that can't be taught in school or in college. This has to be learned because you're working along someone with a work ethic, so.
Absolutely. And it's minimized, right? when it comes to work ethic, and people say, oh, you know what, my kid really works hard in school, so I'm not gonna make them work. Poor little Julia, she works so hard to get A's in school. Or gosh, she's an athlete, so she's in sports, so she shouldn't have to work. She works hard in sports. That's all great. That does mean a lot, right? If kids have to work hard for those things, but actually working with your hands or working with your brain to understand how to create a value for others, man, that's the best. And if you can teach your kids that at a young age, boy, they're going to have an unfair advantage. And I use that term a lot. I talk about unfair advantages in my life, right? And unfair advantage to me wasn't my white privilege, right? It was 100% raised with two parents that loved me, right? It was 100% being raised in America. It was marrying a great woman that became somebody I wanted, that inspired me to try to do the best I could in business and raising my family and all that. And then eventually my faith, right? My faith came through that as well. So there's unfair advantages in life, but one of them is actually a kid understanding the value at a young age, as young as possible, in my opinion. I don't care if it's 8, 9, 10 years old. Heck, I know people that started working at 5, 6 years old with their family, right? For me, it was 10 years old. I started working around my dad, and then got a newspaper route and so on, right? So for me, it was a young age that I understood that the dignity of work, the fun of actually working, and then making something, whether it was the $6 a week I made, delivering newspapers and the tips I had at the end of the week, or it was a lawn mowing jobs. For me to have that cash in my pocket earned by my hard work, man, that was the best feeling I could have. And that it started there. And then from there on, a few years, let's say 13, 14 years old, we lived in a lower income area. A cottage turned into a full-time home. But man, I knew for the rest of my life, I would always have a job. I always have money in my pocket, because I knew that I knew how to make money back then, right? And so the confidence of being self-sufficient and the dignity of work is a huge thing that many people don't understand the importance of, in my opinion. Right? These are my opinions, but I believe there's much more young people today that don't understand the importance, the dignity of work, to have a job, to be self-sufficient. And my kids, I had this kind of nightmare in my head back when my kids were young, that they would grow up to be lazy, dependent of me or others, right? And so I had my kids working at very young ages, and I know how I worked when I was a kid, and people looked at me back then, or my dad, he was abusive because he worked us a lot. And I know that when my son, I had him working a lot, people would look at me even 30, 20 years ago now, right? He's 33 now, 20 years ago, saying, that kid works too much. He shouldn't have to work so hard, right? And so, but today my kids are self-sufficient. If something happens to me, something happens to my business, no doubt in my mind, they'll go out and they'll get a great job, or they'll start their own business all over again, because they have all the tools that it takes to do that, right? So my comfort in my life is, hey, you know what? I can take risk. I may lose it all again, and I've done it already, right? I may lose it all again. If I do, my kids are going to be fine, right? And that's a great feeling.
Well, Gary, so I was actually just on a green industry podcast yesterday, and the person asked me, what are the 3 things that makes me most successful? And you just hit on a few things that I just want to bring up, and then I'm going to let you explain to my listeners about all your businesses, because I know who Gary Rabine is, but the listeners don't yet. But, one of the things, first, I worked with my dad when I was 12 years old, so the whole thought of you're working them too hard. My mom and dad said you have a choice. You can stay home and wash dishes with your sister and vacuum, or you can go work with dad. I was like, I'm working with dad. There's a lot of windshield time there. I can talk to my dad. I can learn from my dad. I would go and work with my dad. But it's what got me in the industry. My dad was a union laborer, and doing some side work. You asked me the first time we met where the name Langton Group came. As a matter of fact, to the audience, the first time I met Gary, he saw one of my robots outside my house. You may not even remember this, Gary. And you said, hey, that robot's pretty cool. I need one on my golf course. And did you steal that name Langton Group from my company, Rabine Group? Okay. And it made me laugh, because actually my dad had a company called the Langton Group. And when I started Langton Group, I had to take the off just so that I could incorporate in Illinois. But I did it because I wanted to show my dad how I could grow his dream of the Langton Group. He just never did it. He had 5 kids, real conservative guy. But one of the things that I always got from my parents was, if you treat people right, they will always come back. And you can look at this at employees or customers. You treat your customers right, they're always going to come back to you. And if you treat your employees right, they're always going to stay. And these are things that you just can't learn in school. These are things you have to learn from people that you look up to in your life. And when you talk about your kids being set up with all the right tools to succeed, if something happens to you, I feel the same way. You know, if I teach my kids how to treat people, then if something happens to me, they're always going to treat people right. And whether they start their own business or work for someone else, they're either going to treat their boss right, they're going to treat their customer right. I say all the time, even when you have your own business, you have a bunch of bosses. Your customers are really your boss. Like they want something, you know? And I always tell people, don't call me your boss, call me your leader. Like I'm not your boss, I'm your leader, you know? So anyways, but to not get sidetracked right out of the gate, because I want people to truly know Gary Rabine. So I want to get started with, how did Gary Rabine, in your opinion, you know, starting from the beginning, you've already kind of hit on it a little bit, get to the point where you're at, and if you have any past jobs, okay, that kind of define you, you know, you like for me, I looked at certain jobs or certain people I worked for, and I said, when I lead, I want to lead this way, but there's other people I worked with or for that I said, I'm not going to lead that way. So could you expand on that?
Yeah. So for me, Joe, I mean, my my dad is crazy. My dad's a workaholic still today, at 81 years old. He doesn't work in a job or anything, right? He doesn't have a business, anything like that, but he works every day. He's doing something, whether it's for his neighbors, he's cutting trees, he's splitting firewood. He heats his house with a stove still, so he stocks up his firewood. Even though he goes to Florida now in the wintertime, he still stocks up for winter so that if he does come home, he's ready. Or if somebody stays in the house, they're ready, because that's what we've always used for heat, was firewood. So my dad worked in a factory, the union guy in the AFL-CIO rubber workers union, North Chicago, Illinois, for Goodyear Rubber. Back then, it was their hose division. And so my dad worked in a factory 40, 50 hours a week, became the union steward, and at the same time started his own business. There's a Dutch elm disease in Illinois, I think across the country. And so these Dutch elms that were prevalent to this area were all dying off. So he went and bought a chainsaw. He had a couple of Dutch elms in our yard, and he went and bought a chainsaw at Sears. His first and only loan of his life. He loaned $150 or $100 and some odd dollars. And that was the only financing he ever did in his life, because after that, he paid cash for everything. But bottom line is, he bought this chainsaw, did his own trees. A neighbor said, "Hey, can you come over and look at our trees? We got some dead Dutch elms too." And so he looked at him and said, "Heck yeah, I could do that. And what would you charge me?" He said, "Well, you know what does this sound fair?" Right? Came up with $100 or a couple of dollars. And so sure enough, he did that. And he goes, "Man, this is good money, and it's good exercise, good money." He ended up putting ads in what was the Advertiser back then, which I think is still around. In Northern Illinois, there's a thing called the Advertiser. Put an ad in the Advertiser and started cutting trees on the side. That grew into he bought a pickup truck, put sideboards on it. Then he bought an old beat up dump truck, put big sideboards on that, and then he started hauling sand and gravel for people, little loads and stuff. So he ended up doing many different things for, let's say, 10 years of the 20 years he worked in the factory. He did all these side jobs and had his little side businesses. So the guy would end up wanting to work the night shift so that he could work all day and then work at night too, right? So his business, he was doing it in the day and working at night. So anytime I was home from school, I was working. And my sisters, actually, I had 4 sisters older than me. They were doing it before me. But as I got to be 8, 9, 10 years old, he was bringing me everywhere he went. Taught me how to use an axe when I was 10 years old, and a wedge and a hammer and a sledgehammer, eventually an axe, and then started using a chainsaw when I was probably 11 years old, and working at his side whenever I wasn't in school. So I knew that if I wasn't at school, I was working. I didn't do a lot of homework, didn't care about homework, and he didn't care if I did homework because he'd rather have me working with him. So it was either school or work for me. And so I learned work ethic from my dad, and that was a blessing. Many people that watched me work around him, and my sisters as well. really believe that he was an abusive guy back then even, right? Because you're always working. So either way, so what did I learn back then? In watching my dad deal with these customers, I learned, good customer service and bad customer service. My dad, it was an old, not old, I mean, that time a young guy, but he's always kind of a hard ass, right? And so my dad was set in his ways, no matter what those ways were. And he would believe he did the customer a great job. And even if the customer didn't believe he did a good job, he would convince him that he did, right? Because he was a bigger dude, and he like you, Joe, a little shorter version of you, maybe, right? But he was a little more, like I said, a little more of a bullying type of guy, whether he knew it or liked it or not. So either way, my dad always got paid. He always thought he did the best job for the customer, and oftentimes he did, but never got to be great at anything because he did so many things. He did trees, he did trimming, he sold firewood. He started doing dirt work, little gravel and dirt work around people's yards with his truck and an old Bobcat he bought. He bought a really old tiny little Bobcat, no cage on it. And I began running that at like 10, 11 years old and became really efficient on it by the time I was 12, 13 years old. But bottom line is, my dad did probably 10, 12 different things for customers, but never got great at anything. Once he got paid for a job, he really looked upon himself as he's an expert, he's a professional now, and he didn't really strive to learn a lot more or be great at any of the things he was doing, in my opinion, right? My dad might think differently, but in my opinion, never got great at anything. So my thing was, number one, as I got to be older, was how do I get away from my dad? How do my dad was a controlling guy. I mean, I didn't mind working hard, but he was a controlling guy, and it was his way or the highway. So as I got to be 15, 16 years old, he's telling me that, hey, someday I can go to work for him. And in my mind, I'm saying, man, I don't really want to go to work for you, right? I mean, this is not my dream thing, is working for my controlling dad. I couldn't say it to him at that time because I wasn't big enough to take a hit from him at that time, right? And it wasn't abnormal for it to get a slap upside the head from a big hand or a kick in the butt or whatever. And so I was a pretty good kid. My younger brother was different. My younger brother, 2 years behind me, was a kid that constantly created havoc. Didn't want to go to work with him at all. Stayed home a lot. But my dad would, with John, my brother Johnny, little Johnny, right? He was always kind of in trouble here and there, and my dad would be bothered by him. So often it was just me working with him. Anyway, but bottom line is, my dad raised me with work ethic, and even though he was a hard ass guy, he was a loving guy, right? He always showed love. And so, he would kick you in the ass one point in the day, or slap you upside the head without you knowing it's coming, right? And it was not a light tap usually, and yet at the end of the day, he would tell you how much he loves you, and boy, you know what? He only kicked you in the ass because you did something stupid, and it was his reaction. Sorry for that slap upside the head, for that backhand, but man, you know what? You really pissed me off, right? I mean, and what you said or what you did or whatever. So again, but he always showed love. So no matter what, my dad is a big blessing in my life. He showed his work ethic. He showed his love. I had a mother that was amazing, also always positive, always showing love. So again, but my thing back then is the golden rule. I learned the golden rule at a young age. I heard somebody talk about it at 17, 18 years old. Is just treat people like you'd like to be treated, right? And my dad, I don't believe, focused on that rule as well as I thought he should. So I eventually went to work for a paving guy at 13, 14 years old through high school. When I wasn't working for my dad, when he was working in the factory, I would work for this paving guy, grading driveways for him, because I got to be really efficient on that little Bobcat. And this guy had a case uniloader, case skid steer, and it was a 1735 back then in the 70s. And so I'd run his machine, grading driveways. And eventually I told my dad, hey, Dad, I like this case. The hand controls better than the foot and hand. And eventually my dad got a case, 1830, I think it was back then. But anyway, bottom line is, got to be very efficient on these machines. And I liked the paving business this guy was doing. I liked it a lot because my dad didn't like it at all. So my dad didn't like the paving business. My dad would help deliver asphalt to this company, a guy out of Antioch, Illinois, actually. And I liked it because my dad didn't like it. And I'm like, man, the guy I was working for was doing mediocre quality work at best. I watched customers knowing that he wasn't treating like they like to be treated, right? And I knew in my head that there was an opportunity for business, because this guy had a lot of driveways to pave consistently. And yet his quality was mediocre, his service was mediocre. and he didn't really care about the customers or treating like he'd like to be treated, right? So that was a golden rule, was something that I've always lived my life thinking, how do I treat my friends, my customers, my teammates, right? How do I treat them like I would like to be treated, right? If I'm an employee, I don't want to be treated like an employee. I want to be treated like part of the team. And so I was a competitive guy in sports, football, wrestling in high school. And in those sports, I learned, teamwork. I had coaches that taught teamwork. And man, that's what I want to be. If I'm an employee, I don't want to be called employee. I want to be part of the team. So began calling my teammates and not employees. And like you, instead of boss, leader is a good terminology. But as long as you're inspiring more leadership to grow, that's a great terminology, because you want other leaders to take on the reins, right? But so that golden rule was probably one of the first things I learned, is how do I treat people like they don't want to be treated? How do you do it? Pave a driveway for somebody that they're going to be proud of, like I am proud of the driveway I paved for them. So I think that's the first big lesson I learned. Is a simple thing, right? But I think it's something, if everybody thought that way consistently, how do you treat others like you'd like to be treated? Not that we're perfect, not that we're going to always do it, right? But if we can strive to do it, I think you're in good shape, right? You're in better shape than many.
Yeah, well,
and
yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head, and that's why, to me, it's, as you explained that, it's no wonder that Rabine Paving grew like it grew, right? I mean, that was going to be one of my next questions is, what do you attribute, in my opinion, your explosive growth at Rabine Paving? Especially going from a local company to a national company now, right? And so, that's kind of the next thing that I want you to speak on, but it's a good platform to go off of, is what you just said. You saw an opportunity from mediocre pavers, so you differentiated, right? You said, okay, we're going to, from what I just heard you say, we're going to treat people how I want to be treated, and we're going to get them to be as proud and passionate about their driveways as I am. And I don't want to take words out of your mouth, but that then I think morphed into parking lots and bigger stuff. So why don't you expand onto that and talk about how you took this initial idea, leaving your dad, starting to do this other stuff, and then grew this awesome company and organization.
Yeah. So for me, guys, I think it. Early on, I didn't get it. I didn't understand how to scale. I built it, myself and my dad initially, because I ended up not wanting to work with my dad anymore. I wanted to do paving. I ended up, my dad muscled himself into a partnership with me early on, and again, love my dad, but boy, he wasn't the perfect partner that for me. And we fought. We had fist fights on jobs. I got to be as big as my dad, and I was a bodybuilder and everything else. I wrestled as a young guy, so I got to be much tougher. So actually, as I got tougher, I would challenge my dad a lot more, and a lot of times it would end up to fist at each other. Well, I can tell you, I never threw a fist at my dad, but he was never afraid to throw one at me, and I think he would admit that. But either way, bottom line is, as I got to be a little older, my 19, 20, 21. And I wanted to do this business. I really wanted to do it on my own. But then my dad came, eventually loaned me some money for a piece of equipment. And then, after I got the equipment, we're very productive, making good money with higher production. My dad, kind of said, "Okay, we're partners now." And I said, "No, we're not." And we went back and forth. And after arguing for a couple of days, on the paving work that I wanted to be, do individually on my own, he became a partner eventually with me. But and at the time, I'd been working for him by the hour, because he'd left the factory after I graduated high school. Before I graduated high school, left the factory, was doing all the stuff on his own, and it was final grades and grading. It was sewer hookups around Lake County, Illinois, because the septics were going to sewers. It was seawalls. We would do retaining walls around the chain of lakes. We do riprap seawalls, stonework, right? And we did, again, like 10, 15 different things for customers that would, that homeowners. And yes, he did fine, right? He was doing, I'm guessing $400,000 or $500,000 a year in revenues, and he profited really well. He had no full-time employees, and I got out of high school, and it was with a vision of my own business, and worked for him at the time, big money. I think it was about $13-14 an hour back then in 1981. That was pretty good money. But I did it with a chip on my shoulders. I was eventually going to start a business, and I was embarrassed a couple times that I wasn't going to college. And the Ditch Digger CEO was derived from the terminology a friend of mine used and laughed at me in study hall, calling me, saying I'm going to be a ditch digger, and that's, the world needs ditch diggers, Rabine, right? So that story I talk about, but we're
going to get to that story too, Gary, by the way. That's actually one of my questions. So you're going to get to explain Ditch Digger CEO in a minute.
Yeah, so that was a chip on my shoulder, right? So for me, it's good to carry chips on your shoulder if they're positive chips, and you can look at them and say, man, I'm gonna prove such and such, right? I'm gonna prove somebody wrong. I'm gonna prove that I can do this to myself, to somebody else, whatever. And I think that's a good thing. So either way, what for me, my goal was to be a paving guy or landscaping guy. So I was going to be in your business or paving back then, because I'd done enough landscaping, not really enough in horticulture and all that, but I did a lot of turf stuff. I did hardscapes, and so I was either going to go landscaping or paving. I was focused on that. My dad didn't like the landscaping side. He didn't like turf. He didn't like doing any type of turf or horticulture. He didn't like doing shrubs and bushes. Nothing he had to guarantee that he wanted to do, right? So so that was the other thing. It was one of those two things I wanted to do. Anyway, so the story about Ditch Digger CEO, you asked that question, but in high school, first of all, I had a couple of potential wrestling scholarships, and my coach came to me one day, senior year of high school, and I was pretty excited. The coach said, "Hey, Gary, there's a couple of schools that are interested in you." And my senior year was the first year I got decent grades. I was probably in the top 95% of my class my first 3 years of high school. Top 95%, right? That's a big deal. Out of 100 kids, I was number 90, probably 94. And then all of a sudden my senior year, I said, I'm going to try and get good grades. And I got pretty good grades. I got, mostly A's, a couple B's, and I moved myself in the top 75% of my class, right? I didn't really think that I was still college material or anything, but my coach, thought that was important. I should think about it. And came to me with a couple of schools that were interested in partial wrestling scholarships for me. So I thought about it a little bit, and that a couple of days later, I was raking dirt. So think about, final grading a yard. My dad and I are, 50, 100 feet away, whatever it was. And while we're raking, we talk about different things. And I'm raking dirt, and with a nice, I can tell you probably use the same rakes today, the same landscape rakes today. And so, maybe an acre of yard, and we're raking it after I final graded it. My dad's, away from me. I said, "Hey, Dad, I forgot to tell you." I said, Coach came in this week and said that there's a potential, wrestling scholarship that I could go after for, a couple schools. I'm thinking maybe it'd be a good idea to go to college for business or something. I could wrestle. It'd be fun to, compete. And he said, he looked at me, scratched his head, looked at me again. He took his hat off. College, he says, "You're too effing stupid to go to college." He goes, "I didn't go to college, and look at all I got." Right. So that was his mentality. I wasn't, smart enough to go to college, and maybe he was right. I didn't go, right. But either way, that was his mentality. He didn't say it to be mean. He said it because that's sincerely what he believed. He didn't go to college. He didn't know that he was smart enough to go to college. And in hindsight, I think he would have been, and I probably would have been as well. But bottom line is, that was the confidence he didn't have in me for school, right? He knew I could work hard, knew I could make money, but he didn't understand that, college probably wasn't as difficult as he thought. So then shortly after that, I'm in study hall, and a bunch of friends of mine around a table, a bunch of athletes and friends, and they're talking about where they're going to college, and then one friend of mine, a neighbor, says, "Hey, Gary, where are you going to college?" And he knew I wasn't going to college. I said, "Al, I'm not going to college. I'm either going to start a paving business or a landscaping business." And he said, "Oh, so he said it, lightly, in a low voice. Oh, so you're going to be a ditch digger? Hey, Rabine, the world needs ditch diggers." And that was a year after Caddyshack came out, right? So that term that was famous from Caddyshack. Yeah. And I didn't think much of it. And then a few, 10 seconds later, he yells to the study hall of 30, 40 kids, whatever it was in the study hall, not just to the table we're sitting around, but he says, "So, Rabine's gonna be a ditch digger," like that, right? So it was a little bit embarrassing at the time, and but my thing was, I looked around the room and I looked at my friend who said it, and I said, in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna prove to you guys that it's okay not to go to college, and my goal was to make more money than they can make, 4 years out of college, that I'd be making more than they were making within a short period of time. And by the time they got to college with the debt they would have had back then, it would have been big debt, right? It would have been big debt back then, 30, 40 grand probably, right? Yeah. And so for me, it was, hey, you know what? I'm going to prove that I can better myself without a college education. I'm going to get a big jump start on them. So sure enough, that was on my mind on a consistent basis. So you think about short-term goals, long-term goals. My midterm goal of 4 years is my friends are getting out of college and I'm making great money and they're looking for jobs, making a heck of a lot less, right?
And Gary, let me ask you a question. Did any of those friends that laughed in that study hall, did they ever come to you and ask you for a job later on in life?
Yeah, definitely.
Because personally, that happened to me. We share so many commonalities here. So I need to know if we share this also.
Yeah, that person actually that did come back talking about a job. Now I never gave him one, but he asked what we're doing if there's any opportunity. One of his cousin who was at the table definitely worked for me for some time. Didn't work out. He wasn't a hard enough working guy, but he worked for me for some time. And then a couple other people at the table also did, through college, after college, whatever. But either way, and then that wasn't. I could care less if that happened or not, right? But that's just. But either way, so that's a chip on your shoulder, right? My other chip on my shoulder was that my dad said you can't just pave, you got to do everything. My dad believed you had to do everything, and hey, that's not a bad concept if you want to be jack of all trades, master of none, and do a lot of stuff and get by and make money, right? He made good money, he made good profits for a guy, and supporting himself in a job. So my thing was, I knew that I could do one thing and be great at it, and that was the thing I became most passionate about: paving driveways, paving parking lots. And so it took me a long time, though. I mean, when you think of the podcast you're doing, the podcast I'm doing, right, is for a reason, so people can do things faster and get there faster than I did. For the first 10 years, I was partners with my dad and bought him out in 1993 because we had our last fist fight that really bothered me, pissed me off, that I had lots of customers standing watching us at a commercial parking lot we were paving. It was lunchtime, and in the cafeteria there's a glass wall of only 100 feet away from where we were working, and my dad and I had a fist fight in the job, and it was pretty embarrassing. After we got broken up by my guys, one of our foremen at the time. It was pretty embarrassing. All these people were watching, right? So I said, "Yeah, we're done. I'm not going to work with you again. I'm never going to have this happen again. It's embarrassing." And eventually, it took about 8 months after that before I had a deal that he agreed on to buy him out. So that was 1993 into 1994. But again, up to that point, I still don't understand how to really build a business at scale, a scalable business. I was building a job. We built a job for myself and my dad and an income for us, but not really enterprise value. And I think that should be everybody's goal in business, is to build a business that builds enterprise value outside the value of that founder and that leader, right, or leaders. And that wasn't happening for us up until then. So it was probably 15 years in where I discovered differentiation and how it could work if you could differentiate very strong from your competition. And so differentiation became my focus on a consistent basis. And so in my mind, it was, how do I differentiate from my customers to be stronger than them, to get more opportunity than them, to serve my customers better than them, right? I was a very competitive guy. I still am today. At 57 years old, I like to compete at anything. If somebody tells me they got a contest going on, I may suck at it, but I'm in, right? Whatever that is.
I know we were supposed to arm wrestle, but this just didn't work out because we're doing this. And by the way, I am impressed with the amount of pull-ups you can do. You want to tell people? Sorry, I just interrupted, but this is kind of a funny little thing.
There's a few things I'm good at in life, or I've been good at, and one thing I've continually done is pull-ups. I'll do sets of 30. I start at 34, 35, and I go down to my last set when I work out for back and buys, right? It's pull-ups I do, and I'll do it 4 sets of 30 or more, right? And actually they're chin-ups now, they're not pull-ups, right? I used to do a military style, and I could do over 30 when I was in wrestling and stuff. But now, because of bad shoulder, I have to do the kind of sissy way, right? The chin-ups instead of pull-ups.
Did you hear Julia and Gary? Hold on.
That's the way I do them. Chin-ups.
How many can you do, Julia?
Well, I haven't tried in a while. I would say if I really push myself, maybe 10, but that's about it in one set.
Wait, that's awesome.
Not on your level yet.
I know this sounds chauvinistic, and people can call me that sometimes, even though I know I'm not. But for a woman, that's awesome, right? 10 is awesome for a woman. I have one of my daughters, same way, that naturally can do a lot of pull-ups, and she's about the same. She can do 10, 12 pull-ups, right? And I have a son, Nick, who a little Russian guy, right? You guys have met Nick.
Yeah, we met him, yeah.
Nick can do 35 to 40, and he's got amazing strength for a little guy. And it helps if your lower body is scrawny, and I have that going for me, right?
Yeah, I would say, so Gary, I can do about 10, but I'm about 270 pounds. So I'm actually worried I'm going to rip the door jamb off when I'm doing it, you know?
That's a lot for a big dude, right? I mean, I've been 170 pounds. I've gone from 170 to 190 pounds over the last 30, 40 years, depending on how much I'm working out. But either way, bottom line is, I'm competitive. So with everything I do, I want to be, great. I want to find somebody to compete with to kick the crap out of, right? In a nice way. way. I'm not a violent guy, but I do want to kick the crap out of the competition, whatever I do. And so by the time that differentiation came along, I realized I was getting work because I was studying my industry and striving to be great at it. So I picked up some things that other people weren't doing at conferences and talking to engineers across the country that I respected. And so in 1995, probably maybe the year after I bought my dad's share out of the business, I came up with a slogan, discover the difference. So what it means is, as our customers are doing business with us, hey, discover what we do different and ask the question, what the heck does that slogan mean, right? And then as teammates on my team, I want you guys to always think about, what are you doing different every day to serve our customers and make us better than our competition, right? And I have a tendency to hire competitive people also. And if you're not competitive, you don't care about going beyond, you may not work out in the long haul in our businesses, right? So competitive nature, I think, is a good thing as long as you use it in a positive way on a consistent basis. So with the differentiation, that became our focus. How do we differentiate to be better than anybody else in the industry? And then in 2001, we were doing some cool stuff that nobody else in the world was doing. So I went to my team of, let's say at the time, maybe it was 30 people altogether at that time. And so again, we're not a huge business at this point. We're a $6 million company probably. And I'm like, man, you know what? We're doing some cool things here with some of the stuff we're doing in concrete pavements and this pavement texturing, street print stamped concrete, infrared patching. These are things that nobody in the market does until we do it. And some of these things we picked up when nobody else in the world's doing it, right? And so let's forget about this competing locally and regionally with our competition. Let's talk about world class. And my team would kind of roll their eyes at that world class, right? World class. We're a $6 million company. Come on, how can you say that? And so my focus then was okay. I get that you don't get it, but I'm telling you guys, if we focus on, and girls, if we focus on world class, if we don't get there, we fall short. We're still gonna be pretty doggone good. We're gonna be pretty successful. If we're not the best in the world, right? World class to me is the top 5%, top 1%. You could call it top 1%, top 5%. It's probably world class. You probably consider world class, in my opinion, if you're a top 5%. So I said, we can get there in every aspect to be world class. So how do you do that? And I started to seek information from engineers, not only in our country, but outside our country, people in our industry that are the best in our country and then outside the country. And eventually I became friends and networked with some of the best minds in the world in concrete pavements and asphalt pavements. And so eventually in 2005 or 6 came along and got through a big union battle and really, we're licking our wounds from a big union battle in 2001 to 2004. But 2005-06, are back on our feet. We're growing fast, and we grew from 6 million to 20 million in 2 years, and with a view of 100 million in our sights, right? And the only reason I could have that view is because I then was understanding, if I'm in world class, I have to build enterprise value. I have to scale to be world class. I have to be able to serve a bigger market to be world class, right? And unfortunately, I'm not saying fortunately or unfortunately, used dollars kind of what are the biggest commercial paving companies in the country? Who are they? I identified them. I became friends with many of them. I started a forum with some of them, right? So we can get to be friends and understand how we can all get to be stronger and better. Anyway, bottom line is, at the time it was $20-30 million a year companies that were the biggest in the country. And so I knew, okay, I can blow past that and be bigger, but if you measure size, bigger. But how can I be better? How can I work for customers, the biggest and best buyers of pavements in the country, and serve them better than anybody else? That would be world class, right? So we figured out how to pave concrete faster than anybody in the world. We figured out how to use mixed designs that other people in the world weren't using, in concrete pavements mostly, some asphalt paving. We figured out how to use, technology in the field for, 3D technology when it was first being developed and led in that space. And it's dominating our space for the best contractors in the country today. So we're constantly figuring out what it takes to be the best. And it was because we surround ourselves with people that are abundant thinkers that think about being great, being world-class, right? What normal engineering in our space that I would talk to are very, very book-oriented. Engineers in our space would read out of the book the specs that are supposed to be on the job. What I found out was some of the leaders of the national and global organizations for pavements were the people I gravitated to the most because they're always thinking outside the box, challenging the standard specifications. And what I found out through all those relationships were standard specifications by industry were stagnant and old and not always, and very, very often, not the right specifications. But we relied on them because unions, lobbyists had forced them and kept them in place for lower productivity and less longevity of pavement life, okay? Sounds crazy, but I'm very confident today if our budgets, our state budgets and our federal budgets were based on longevity and warranty every time, you would see way more innovation than the stagnation we have today, where the specs are based on engineering principles from 30 years ago, and the unions and the lobbyists for materials often stunt the progression of those and the innovation of those because it hurts their labor, it hurts their material sales, right? So again, what we became was a commercial paving company that began to understand pavements and materials better than our competition across the globe. And I can tell you many things happen from that. But now the scaling mindset starts, right? How do you scale? Well, you need to find great systems, great products, great differentiation, great customers, and then duplicate the greatness as you scale across the country. And that's what we've done. We've then of course invested and built many other companies, some with great success, some with no success. My own mindset as a kid, striving to be great at one thing. If I stuck with that mindset, boy, I don't have to be any wealthier than I am, but I'd be a lot more wealthier today than I am today if I stuck with pavements, because I got into fuel oil distribution business. I got into union roofing business, got into businesses that kick my butt when it comes to financials, right? But I learned from them. Every single time I've lost money, and I've lost a lot, I always seek out the lesson to learn. And one thing I'll tell you, and I think Julia needs to know, is pride kills all good things. And at times in my life I've been prideful, saying, "Oh heck yeah, man, I could buy that business and turn it around, or I can start that business and we'll be great just like we are in parking lots, right?" And maybe I would be if I could focus on that long enough and stick with it. And I had people that were passionate about it. But in many cases, I spread myself too thin, jumping in a business I shouldn't have been in. I'm back to my roots, and my roots are serving facilities owners across America today. Parking lots are our biggest business now still, but we do roofing maintenance for these customers. We do pipe televising with robots underground. We do assessments of pavements and roofs and facades and HVAC and everything with a company we own called Site, a technology company called Site. We're in the doors and docks business, right? But what all these things have in common, these 10 businesses we have today outside the golf course, because the golf course is something I'd love to consider a business, but it's like impossible to make money in it. So I just write it off as it's a fun thing that we like to do.
So Gary, I'm going to interrupt you, because one day I am going to collaborate with you, and I'm going to help you make money at that golf course when we automate it. Okay?
All right.
I know we've been talking about it a lot here and there, but I have actually been waiting for a couple of other product launches. Because we have, I see you as such a mentor, because I'm going to hit on a couple of things really quick so that I make sure I bring this value. You bring up, you wanted to become world-class at about 6 million, okay? And what I think is funny, and it's important for me to say, especially for other people listening, you said, we weren't big then, okay? But when you were a $6 million company, there's a lot of people in your organization that thought you were massive. Okay, I'm kind of dealing with the same thing right now. We're doing 6 million in revenue for snow and 6 million in revenue for landscaping, and I'm telling people we need more. There's not a lot of Garys and Joes. There's a lot of people looking at me saying, my own brother, for instance, what do we need more than $6 million for? Like that's a lot of revenue. Just more headaches, And So we have that in common. And I want to ask, how old were you when you were doing 6 million?
So that was 2001. So I was 35, right? 30, is that right? 2001. So yeah, so seven. So it's
okay. Yeah, because so I'm 41.
I take that back. So basically 19 years ago, right? So I was 38.
Okay. So see, I mean, there's so many things that I only want to do this because really you are my third interview on my podcast. Okay. So it was myself, Julia, now Gary Rabine. Why? Because I look at you and there's so much to be learned from people in similar industries, okay? Because there's parallel things we deal with. And, you hit on a few things is, we all reach a point in our professional career. And I think people like us, I've heard on your podcast, we talk about the entrepreneurial disease, okay? So people that have the want to always grow and get better and better ourselves, and we're so competitive. We're at 6 million, and I know I can achieve more, right? So I think it's amazing that you did it because that's inspiration for me. When I hear you say 100 million, I throw that number around all the time. Rabine Group could be doing $100 million. Secondly, I heard you say what it takes to be world class is 5%. One of the things that I'm always talking to my team about is that, let's get ourselves not to be seen as a great local business, but an organization that's recognized across country. So there's a lot to be learned, even for me as the person interviewing you on the podcast. It's just purely inspirational. But when I hear you starting to get in to some of the things you're saying is focus on one thing, what it seems like to me is you've kind of morphed into something that I feel like we're already doing, which is you're taking your portfolio of business and saying, we do big parking lots. So what else can we do in parallel to that? Not step too far out of our comfort zone, but still bring a value to our core base of customers. Would you say that's really what you're doing with your other businesses?
Yeah. So just the couple, I've had, like I said, I counted 25 businesses I started in the last 20 years, and I 10, and you can call it probably 13 or 14, but really 10 for-profit businesses today. And when I look at these businesses, I'm confident that when they failed, it was because I jumped into something that I didn't have the time to learn everything about, and I jumped into it with a leader or a partner that I trusted had it all covered. That was going to be as passionate as I am in paving. That was going to really drive the growth. And I guess what, I've had some success with that too. I've got a few businesses where that's the case today. I've got partners that are doing all the work. They're CEOs of these companies, kicking butt, right? So it's worked in some cases, but often it doesn't. The reason it works in the cases that are working today for us is they're serving the same customers that we built the great trusting relationships with, right? The big facilities, small facilities, and big facilities owners that trust us. And if Rabine does the job, it's going to be done right. And if there's a problem, they're going to be back, right? And so these companies that we're in today are culturally very aligned with our core values. They're all the same core values. They're working for the same customers. They understand the customer's expectations. They're striving to be world class. Every company we have. So the ones we failed on, in my opinion, and I think I'm pretty accurate on it. After it's a lessons that cost me tens of millions of dollars, right? So these lessons, when you learn these lessons, you don't forget them because it costs you so much. And I think that's a blessing, right? To have a cost in a lesson. I mean, you do in school, let's say you take a test, you fail the test, you get a bad grade. Oh, okay, well, right? Maybe you learn a little because you really care. In my case, I didn't care that much in school, so I didn't learn much from my mistakes. And in business, when it costs you, a few $100,000 or a few million, in my case, one mistake cost me $15 million, right? And when those happen, my whole question to myself is, okay, how do I learn from this lesson so it never happens again? And how do I learn from this lesson that it pays off 10 times over? So the 15 million comes back to me tenfold, right? And that lesson hasn't come back to me tenfold yet, but I'm still, it's a chip on my shoulder. It's going to, and I can go into why. But bottom line is, so the businesses that failed are businesses that we were working for customers that were different from the customers we normally worked for. The Union Roofing Company was for municipalities. It was the city of Chicago. It was O'Hare Airport. We thought this was great, right? Until it wasn't. And it's still, it's a gift that keeps on giving to me right now. I've got more stuff still in the business I shut down 3 years ago. It's coming back at me. And I think it's politically driven in Chicago, but whatever, that's a whole different story. The fuel distribution company, very small margin that I thought I could grow, and a business that was very, very commoditized that I thought I could differentiate. And unfortunately, the differentiation we came up with worked for a short period of time, but it wasn't sustainable. So that business, in one full swoop over an 8-month period, cost me $15 million. I said, okay, that's enough. I sold out of it, just lost a ton of money on it, but sold out of it to live to fight another day. And what I learned from that is I was in a business that was a commoditized business that I pridefully said, I'll figure that out. We're gonna partner. We're gonna find the best minds in the world in fuel distribution. We'll get that figured out like everything else. Boy, we tried, and I had a leader in the business that I thought was a pretty strong leader that in the end made some big mistakes. My mistakes in the long run more than his, because I hired him, right? And I didn't put the right metrics in place to watch him like I could have. He wasn't a bad guy, just a guy that made some bad decisions because it wasn't his neck on the line. So my neck got chopped for $15 million, and he was able to go find another job, right? No problem. So again, but back looking at that, we were working for different customers in both of those industries. We were in products that were pretty commoditized in both industries, companies that we could hardly differentiate because it was union labor is union labor, and O'Hare or Chicago looks for the same stuff, and they're abusive on contractors and how fast they pay. They're abusive in how they treat you after the fact. And then the fuel business, again, like I said, very, very commoditized. What's your price? What's your price? What's your price every day? And you couldn't do anything to hedge the price up to be a fair profit. So that business is a 1% net profit business annually, probably on average in the industry. We were trying to get to 2 or 3%, and we thought that's a fair profit. So either way, that those are businesses working for different customers, working in different industries, and I pridefully, in both cases, we can do this. We can build these businesses. We'll figure out how to differentiate, and we'll kick ass like we've done everything else. Well, that didn't work out so well. So again, I think that commoditization is a tough thing. If you're the 50-pound gorilla in the industry, maybe you can afford to work for 1% for a while, driving out other competitors, and then enter then bring your margins up. I'm not sure, right? But I think any business where you're in a commoditized space isn't good. And there's a book that I recommend that I may have recommended it to you before, but I think I talk about on my podcast too. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy. Blue Ocean Strategy is simple read, right? And all it is it's just it's story after story and how people have been in that shark-infested. Visualize you're in shark-infested waters, and the shark are just biting each other. It's bloody shark-infested waters, right? And I don't want to be there. How do you swim away from that, right? Out to the blue ocean, right? Where there's not that's you're not a commodity being nipped at, right? And the bloody waters of commoditization, and that's blue ocean strategy. How do you differentiate to swim out there in that blue ocean on your own in a market where people want to do business with you because your value proposition is so strong that they don't want to deal with the commoditized market. They know that, hey, you know what? You can get that done really cheap, or you can get it done really great. And I'm going to choose great on this job because it's a picky customer. I got a Class A building. It's got to be great. I want Rabine, right? And so you have to then also be okay with not doing work for everybody, right? Because customers want to commoditize you in many cases, right? So you got to work for customers. You got to find the customers that want great. They don't want headaches. They want to know the job's done right. They can sleep well at night. So you have to find those customers too. And we've done that in our paving industry and the facilities industry. Our customers are awesome. I mean, not to say you always have to replace customers, I think on an annual basis as you grow. And but overall, our customers are some of the best in the world, and they work with us to innovate and to be better. And they know that when it comes to innovation, we're the name they're going to look at, whether it's doors and docks, it's roofing maintenance, it's pavements, concrete and asphalt. It's national. It's a national brand. It's a regional brand, right? We have in a few different regions today. it's this pipe televising. It's this technology business where we fly drones all over people's properties. We use satellite imagery, and there's always something going on. So when people come to me and say, "Hey, what's up, Rabine? What's going on lately?" Right? And I've always got something fun going on because my businesses are constantly trying to be great. Okay, constantly striving to be the best in the world. Okay, so recently we signed a deal with a company. You might have saw it. I think we threw a post on LinkedIn and stuff. But we're the only ones in America now, the only company in America, because we partnered with an Israeli company that now our company's site that does all this due diligence on. We'll do about 5,000 or 6,000 properties this year, where we'll fly them, big commercial properties, industrial properties. We fly them. We get them all their information they need to understand the condition of their pavements, condition of their roofs, condition of their. Now we're doing facades. We're working on HVAC now, getting into that. Lighting, right? We have a bunch of different things, but we're super strong in pavements and roofs, where we have great consultative minds and great engineers. And with that, they can make decisions, 5-year budgets, 10-year budgets. They can understand their urgent needs. And this product site is growing rapidly. Now we've layered on another product where from satellite imagery, we can tell them where all the ground moisture is below the pavement. Okay, we can also tell them where the moisture is in insulation below the membrane of the roof, right? So what does that mean? Huge value. We were paying tens of thousands of dollars for ground penetrating radar to do this, what we're talking about. We're doing this all from satellite imagery now from a company in Israel that's the leader in the market. This company licensed the technology to NASA. NASA can now figure out where all the water is on Venus, Mars, and other planets in our solar system, right? And it's this company's technology that they use. This company developed a business serving the private industry and municipalities all over the world, and we found out about them. How did I find out about them? A friend of mine who understands how innovative we are and how we're always thinking forward gives me a call and says, "Gary, I got to introduce you to the CEO of this company we're looking at maybe buying a portion of." He says, "It's crazy, but I thought about your business site and what you guys are doing and how this might match up." And at the time, this company was only doing, they're investigating not groundwater, they're investigating treated water leaking from pipes underground as much as 10 feet below the surface, okay? They can see water leaking as much as a gallon an hour. So that's a slow leak anywhere in the world, okay? Anywhere think about the whole world, the whole globe. You can tell them an area 30 miles by 20 miles, right? It's a big area. And they can tell you where all the leaking water is, individual, one by one, right? So you give them one municipality, one property, whatever you want, and they can tell you where all the leaking water is, okay? So that was developed, the last 5-6 years. So that when it came to meet me, they flew to Chicago to meet me. I said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. I can help you maybe, but if you can figure out groundwater and hydraulic soils from moisture in soils, man, we got something big." And sure enough, within 6 months, they developed it. Flew back to Illinois from Israel, met with my son and I and our engineers, and we've got a product today, a year later, that's the only company in the world that can do what we do now, right? Our goal is to Israel's site and this company with them in other markets in the world. But right now, we're perfecting this product here in the States first. So again, site is now partnered with the company Utilis, and this product is second to none, right? So it's easy to say, "Hey man, that company's site that's only gonna, not even 3 years old, right? Site is totally a world-class company, right? Nobody in the world can do what we do. So can you call yourself world-class? Hell yeah, you can, right?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I did see that on LinkedIn, and I thought it was amazing. I was actually kind of pissed off that somehow AOS didn't get part of that, automated outdoor. But what the next thought I had, both of us being in snow removal and understanding the liability, was how awesome is this going to be for the snow removal industry, Gary? Because so many times in snow removal, we get caught up in some sort of slip and fall litigation that is not from anything falling from the sky. There are these water leaks or soils that, it's like, I think of one of the Costco's we do, that I'll keep the location nameless, but I know that water runs through that slab of CA6. There's a road I can look at that's above the grade of that parking lot. And in the middle of winter, there is water pushing up from every crack and crevice and curb line you could think of. And we're having to deal with the freeze, the refreeze, resaltings. And in the world of seasonal snow removal, and maybe you already thought of this being in snow removal, and if you did it, I'm glad I inspired the thought on this podcast today, but it's amazing the amount of snow contractors that would be interested in that type of area. So Joe, is huge.
Perfect. So Joe, you could use this as a product. It's not expensive. You could mark it up 50% and for your time and energy that you would spend overseeing what you're doing, right? But it's an inexpensive product. It's $1,000 or $2,000 per property. Now, when you're on a big distribution center, a big commercial property, if you can tell a customer where their issues are and how to solve those, right? You got, we have crews that put in under drains. We're something we've always been good at is identifying groundwater, like you just talked about. When ground, you can identify when it's coming from the ground, right? Whether it's remnants of the
calcification, exactly.
Whether it's lime fines or aggregate fines in the joints, it's coming up, not down, right? Okay, so that's hydraulic soils, groundwater. It could be under surface, creeks in the ground or whatever, right? And so again, you can use that product all day long, Joe, and it's going to create value for you and your customers. And we love it, right? We'd love you to take this product on and say, hey, we're going to be a partner of site, and we're going to use this product. So we haven't even gone there yet, right? We're using it selfishly for all ourselves, and pavement, specifically pavement more than snow. But either way, bottom line, you can use this product, and we'd say, hey, Joe, use the heck out of it, because you're going to help create great business for us and name recognition for us as well, because it's one of our products. But it's going to make you smarter. So right now, I'm selling this product, not selling it. I'm allowing our exclusive partners in paving across the country to use it, to make them to take them to a level that I went from. I went from a $6 million company that let's say, I would say 3 or 4 million revenues when I was giving away engineering for my customers. It was hillbilly engineering, right? It was me, my mind, and my experience with an engineer that I'd bounce things off of, right? So my hillbilly engineering worked well on customers that trusted me, not so well on customers that wanted to see the PE stamp on it, right? But either way, I was redesigning parking lots when they were talking about repaving parking lots at times. A company would have 20 in their portfolio they had to redo. They would go to an engineering firm, and often the engineering firm goes right to the specification book, and they go right by the book, right? And I would see how crazy they were. They would replace good aggregate base, good pavement that could be paved over, even in many cases, thinking they're covering their butt and they're giving their customer a great product. And instead, they're costing them 3 times as much as they should. And so what did I figure out? I figured out, boy, if you fix the groundwater that's causing all this problem first, and then you fix the aggregate base where it's been infected by soils, now that's only 5-10% of the parking lot, not all of it. And then after that, now we're going to build a better pavement on top than what was there prior, right? A thicker pavement, a concrete pavement, whatever. And we're going to provide a product for a lot less money. And so back to that, we went from a $3 million company to $6 million because we're giving away this engineering, and our customers would give them their whole portfolio in the Chicago area and say, hey man, look at it all and tell me what I can do better, right? And we would honestly save them a ton of money and just looking out for their best interest, like we talked about it earlier, treating them like we'd like to be treated, right? And engineers would be bothered by this sometimes because we'd take some of their work, I guess. But that grew into more of that. And we grew nationally because the same thing. We actually hired really good engineers then in the late 90s, early 2000s that were pavement specific, groundwater and geotech engineers that would go out, and now for Walmart and Home Depot and Lowe's and all these bigger customers, we would do the same thing for them. They're like, oh my gosh, this is a value. So then they would want to include us in their bidding opportunities. So again, that's how we've grown. So now what we can do for these small markets where we call them exclusive certified partners that pave parking lots for us, where we won't go, where we don't want to go, we don't need to go. We project manage our certified partners, and we sell for them, and we give them the Rabine brand in their market, the customer. But we have somebody in the marketplace that can be that's going to be more efficient than we can be in doing the job. But these are we call exclusive certified partners. So these companies are companies that are $5 and $10 million in revenues. We're going to be giving them this product site. They will be the experts that we were back then, right? The expert that we became in the early 2000s. They're going to be that now. So they'll grow. The average size of, let's say, the top 3 companies in any major market are similar, $20, $30 million companies, right? These little $5 to $10 million companies, we can help them get to 15, 20, 30 million in their marketplace and be one of the best by giving them the expertise that we're going to be giving them. When I say giving it to them, they'll pay for us to fly the properties, do all this due diligence, but they're going to brand it themselves and be the experts in their marketplace with our information, right? And what are we going to get for that? We're going to get great data. We're going to get national relationships with their national customers that they can't, the national properties that they can't serve regionally, right? And what are they going to get? They're going to get expertise. They're going to get our backup and support, and they're going to get our work regionally when we have it. So it's a beautiful relationship that we're growing across the country in paving. But,
so Gary, do you know Julia and I are doing the exact same thing with Automated Outdoor Solutions? So we are doing the exact, like we're basically authorizing contractors with our expertise, with what we've developed.
Sure.
Like when you bring up site, and you said when you look at the amount of revenue, even though site's a new company, you're still a world-class company because no one else is doing it. This is how Julia and I feel with AOS. No one else is taking robots and putting them on properties and putting them in service agreements and doing the full service.
So right there, you could be like a master user of site, because you can go to all those customers and say, man, you know what? You want to be real experts and understand what's going on below the pavements that you're snow removing. You want to understand the soils and any groundwater. I don't know if it matters in trees and shrubs and all that, but
no, it does, because so groundwater, Gary. So like here, it's funny. I got into landscaping, you got into paving, but I will literally pull into a parking lot and see trees in decline, and instantly I could call a guy like you instantly and say, there's a groundwater issue here, because trees don't like wet feet. So what happens is any parking lot, and you will probably be like, oh, Joe is on something here. I'm sure you would agree, any parking lot that has a groundwater issue also has a bunch of dead trees in the parking lot. And what's ironic is they always blame it on the snow contractor. Oh, it's your salt and it's this and it's your that. And it's like, no, it's your groundwater, because I can dig a hole for your tree, and if I don't plant it within 10 minutes, it fills with water. You have a problem in your sub base, so anyways. But
so again, think about the value of being a master user and your partners out there with the ability to go out and be the experts and understand what's below that turf, 10 feet, as much as 10 feet below that turf. How much water is there? A water problem? Is it a seasonal problem? Is it a problem that's always there? Right? Is a lake, a pond, a puddle below that pavement? Right?
Yeah.
From the rain the night before? Is it from the last year's worth of water infiltration from the surrounding properties, right? You can figure this stuff out with this technology that you can never do before. So it's so cool. And what does it do? It creates an element of expertise for the user that they didn't have before. Like as you're doing with the automated mowers, right? That's pretty cool. Now you're an innovator if you're doing that, right? You're creating innovators out of people that maybe don't spend the money to innovate normally, right? So that's cool.
Well, and so we're both, we're automating success, right? Because what you're doing is instead of having to go to every one of these properties and either with soil probing or radar or whatever you said you're doing, and now you're taking a bigger view. Like one of the reasons I'm excited to interview Austin soon is to learn more about site, because like I look at a guy like me looks at a company like yours with site and the drone network, and satellite views. So we have our own app, and I can zone out and map out automotors. But let me tell you what I can't figure out: where there's power, right? I still have to send somebody to figure out where I can pull power. So I've actually thought even about us having a relationship where Automated Outdoor Solutions uses site to tell us where, look for power outlets. While you're flying around looking at all this other stuff, look and identify where there's power on buildings or where the transformers are at, so I can get an electrician to come in and put it in something. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it sure seems like you can identify plant and shrubs and tree problems too, right?
Yeah.
You can fly around every tree, every shrub, and identify issues, whether it's insects or whatever it is. Brother, I don't know enough about that stuff, but it sure seems like the script could be as such that it flies all the planting areas, right? All your areas of plants and trees and all that, and it dials in all that. So you get you get bird's eye view on every single tree, every plant, so you can identify, hey man, just so you know, we're seeing an issue with your pin oaks. You've seen an issue with your maples, and whatever it is, and here's what it is, right?
Well, and what automation does is it decreases the bottlenecks. I mean, what you guys are doing is in your business and all your partners now that are partnering with you is every business has a bottleneck. So like in my business, the biggest bottleneck I see is, getting estimators to a project, doing the estimate, figuring it out, all the planning part, right? Like what I found is I can find people to get the work done, but you lose so much time in planning. Sometimes by the time you get it all figured out, the customer loses interest in the project in the first place, So especially for me as a landscaper, maybe not you so much as paving, because the longer they wait to pave a parking lot, the holes just get bigger. With landscaping, people just get used to seeing a dead tree there. They pay somebody to cut it down in the short term, and then they're like, I don't even need a tree anymore,
Sure.
But what I'm hearing, is the bottleneck of collecting the data to engineer the work is decreasing, right? That's what you're doing with your technology.
The platform, especially as we invest in AI, more in AI, right? Eventually, it identifies all your issues. So I mean, you're going to be able to program that with AI, the platform to say, hey man, here's what's a common thing that kills trees that you can see on the leaves or whatever.
Well, yeah, there's tar spot. There's diplodia, like a lot of Austrian pines are dying from fungus. There's rust needle. Yeah, so tons and tons of things like that. Yeah.
So again, I mean, we'll be able to develop this program with the help of the landscaping experts, right? And we haven't gone there yet, right? To identify fungus, right? So hey, this tree's got this type of fungus. If we don't do X, Y, and Z to this thing, life expectancy is another 6 months or a year or whatever, right? I mean, I think there's really cool things that we can done with Site that make it so easy for a landscaping, especially a national platform landscaper, to be a huge value to their customers, right?
Yeah.
So the goal for Site is really be a SaaS product. A SaaS product, I think of Salesforce, but this product that takes in all major expensive on the exterior of a building and consults to them all with startup of their computer, and they pull up the program, and on site, every site has a spot within the property where the building owner, engineer sets the drone, and every 2 weeks, every month, whatever they want, it flies the property by script and identifies everything, right? Landscaping, turf, lighting, pavements, roofing, facade, HVAC, and it keeps up with what's going on in the maintenance cycle and the depreciation cycle of all these things, right? And it identifies problems. Hey man, we slip and fall, alert. We got a red flag. What's the red flag about? There's an area that must have settled in the parking lot because you got a slip and fall hazard where the pavement is deviated by 1/4 of an inch over this whole 100 square feet in front of this handicap area, right? Oh man, red flag. Let's get that fixed, right? Boy, we got some fungus on these Austrian pines. Oh, what does that mean? Red flag. What does that mean? Well, this type of fungus will take 5 years to kill the tree. It looks to be you're 2 years into the 5-year death of it, right?
And about 2 years, by the way. 2 years.
What's that?
I said about 2 years. I'm going to add some value. Yeah. So an Austrian pine has they hold 3 years of growth. You have year 1, year 2, and then the candle is year 3. This is important for you to know on a golf course. So basically, if you identify diplodia in year 1, once it attacks that year's candle, it can't grow again. So basically, within 3 years, diplodia will absolutely destroy itself and any pine around it. So
there you go. So think about a platform or somebody like Salesforce. It has Salesforce. Every landscaping company might have this program. Every building owner has it, right? And the landscapers building is on the same plan, they understand that how the program works. But it's not us flying these sites ourselves all the time, right? Now it's them flying their own sites with an automated drone that costs them, as cheap as these are getting, eventually be $200, right? For a great drone that the building engineer just puts it on this little pad or this little square, little painted out mark on their parking lot or their sidewalk. And that's where it starts every day, every time it goes up. And maybe it's every month, every year. It doesn't have to be that often, but the more often it is, the faster you're going to see issues, right? So anyway, I'm confident that that's where that's going eventually, and we're getting closer and closer every day to that, right? And so again, what does it do? It provides expertise. It provides a knowledge for the customer that they would never have otherwise. It brings expertise to the table at their fingertips that they didn't have before. And then the landscapers, the pavers, the roofing companies that buy into that system, that support it, will be the most successful, because they're going to be on quick dial, right, to anybody that's running the system.
There's a couple of other questions I wanted to get to, and one of them is, another common thing we have is owning, there's a lot of you've got kids and stuff in your business, right? You've got Austin, you have your daughter, and as I'm sitting here with my daughter, who is a key part of our business, I know personally for me, it's what motivates me. It's one of my, people assume I'm motivated to grow because I just want more money. And what motivates me to grow is I own a business with my brother. My cousin Tony works for me as my sales manager. Tanner is my general manager. I consider family now. Anyways, it literally, it's like every day for me, it's like I'm going to a family party, right? And because of that, it motivates me to continue to grow these businesses. I want to see if we share that commonality, if we're mutual, that's kind of one of your things, because it's mine.
So number one, I hear you saying, I kind of say the same way. I mean, it's crazy that we should be embarrassed or shy about saying we want to make more money, okay? Because people think money is greed, and they're taught that money is greedy. And well, guess what? We can only do. We don't need a ton of money. I could have stopped a long time ago. But it's growing opportunity to serve more people, right? To serve more teammates, to create more millionaires that can be sustainably financially strong the rest of their lives, right?
Well, and one of the things, Gary, I just want to comment, because you've brought something up about creating more millionaires. I don't think there's not enough people that work for guys like you and I that realize, and I'm sure you're going to agree with this, part of the reason I always want to grow my company is so that my current people that have grown it to the level we are don't hit a stagnant pay scale. It's so that they can continue to grow with us, So I think a lot of times in our political setting, it's seen as like the guys growing the businesses just want to keep all the money. No one's ever talking about the guys growing the businesses, growing it with people.
Ceilings are dangerous to all of us, okay? Ceilings are dangerous. For you and I, it's, hey, man, I'm losing more hair all the time. And that ceiling, I hit my head against the ceiling, I'm losing more of this, right? And so, but ceilings are dangerous to all of us. Number one, as a business leader, it's dangerous to have ceilings of growth and size, because we're not going to keep great people on our teams if there's a ceiling, right? If they see that, hey, Joe, Gary, they're going to be around for another 20 years and they're not growing past this size. So I'm going to grow, and then I'm getting the heck out of here. I'm going to go to the next company that can grow me more. Right?
Or start their own.
Or start their own.
Yeah.
Or start their own. And the thing is, it's okay. I mean, I welcome people to not be okay with the size that we are, or not want us to grow faster and go on their own. I think it's a good thing. But either way, here's the thing. I believe that if we can continually foster growth and opportunity, our customers are going to be happier. If we can serve them better with more innovation and better products and services as we grow, we can afford to innovate more. We can afford to deliver better to them. Our lives and our businesses and our success and the enterprise value that we create is exclusively is a bet on one thing. It's how well do we serve? How well can we serve the world? Whether it's our teammates, our vendors, our customers, it's all the above, right? All the above. But if we're excellent at that, and you think of Microsoft and you think of Apple and all these great companies, what do? All they do is serve better than anybody else in the world. And what we have in society, we have society saying, "Oh man, don't be brown. You're a brown noser. You're an ass kisser. You're a brown noser. This or that, right?" Well, wait. They're stunting people's passion maybe to serve, like it's bad. No, man. If you're the best servant-minded person in your industry, you're going to be the best in the industry. If you want to serve better than anybody else, more people are going to want your product. That's awesome. And more opportunities are going to come. And guess what? You're going to make more money. Oh, isn't that terrible? You're going to make more money. I mean, how crazy is it that you have to worry about people thinking, Joe is going to make more money, and that's a bad. And believe me, there's people out there, envious people that don't want Joe to make more money. Hey, Joe's got a nice house already. He's got this nice business, and you're probably top 5% in the size you are today. Landscaping companies, average landscaping company might be a $500,000 a year business, right? The average. You're 20 times more than that or more. So guess what? You're probably in top 5% already. But there's a lot of people that will envy your growth, your success, because that darn Joe, man, he's greedy. He's taking up all this work. He's growing all over the place. But if you know in your heart and your team knows and your customers know you have a servant heart, doesn't matter. And I believe that, if your faith strong like I am today, and my family is, right? God teaches us to serve, and that's all all Jesus Christ did was serve everybody on this planet better than anybody else. That's why his name is so strong, right? And so if we take that in business, say, man, I want my name, Rabine Group and Rabine Paving, to be the strongest in the country, not because I care that I get any richer, because I really don't care. I mean, if it happens, that's fun. That's another element of competition. But really, I can do great things if I have a servant heart for the rest of my life, and better than I could do if I was broke, right? So for me, I know my goal is a servant heart, and that's why I'm going to always serve my customers great. And if I don't, I want to know about it. As the chairman of my companies today, I want a customer to call me if there's an issue still today. And I mean, I don't get a lot of calls. I think they call other people, my son and our leaders of our businesses first. And probably even before that, they probably call a supervisor, foreman on a job, and the thing gets fixed without even coming to my leaders, right? So I get very little calls, but I want those calls every chance I get, because I want to be able to mitigate issues and show that I care, right? So again, I believe that a servant heart is the most important thing we can have in business. And having a servant heart, man, if you can scale that heart to serve better, bigger, faster, God's going to reward us. And I think our communities and our country will as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of times people are always like, man, you've got a horseshoe up your butt. You're just the luckiest guy. And I'm like, honestly, I do believe that sometimes good things do come to me more than other people's, but I also feel like it's because I'm doing right by people, so people will think to themselves, like, if I bring this opportunity to Joe, I don't have to worry about Joe screwing me over with the opportunity, because I am like a servant leader. It's like I want us all to gain from the fruits of my labor. Like, you know what I'm saying?
The saying, that's very simple saying, that the harder we work, the luckier we get, right? The harder we work, the luckier we get, right? And I think that's in anybody's life. And the other thing is looking at failures as short term, right? Hey, I failed many, many times. I still fail often, and I hopefully fail fast, right? Yeah. Because through my failures, I look for the lessons and I learn from them. But I'm kind of a ditch digger, and I'm really totally a hillbilly in my opinion. And so it takes me a little longer to learn maybe than most people. But boy, after 3 or 4 times I get hit in the head, I don't forget it, right? Some people are smart enough, they learn the first time. But bottom line is, I believe that if you're afraid of failure, you don't be an entrepreneur, right? If you embrace failure and embrace the fight and the loss that you'll take sometimes, right? To learn from, then entrepreneurship is your thing. If you're afraid of going back to nothing, if you're afraid of losing everything you got, man, don't be an entrepreneur. Be ready for that, right? If you can be ready for that, it's probably going to happen in some time in our careers that we lose it all. It's happened to me a few times, right? And if you can look at it as, no big deal, I'll get back up and do it again. I did it once, I'll do it again. I mean, you have to have the confidence that you know how to serve, and the confidence you know how to innovate and create, and the confidence you know how to build relationships. And man, you know what? You can bounce back off and you'll be fine. So again, the harder you work, the luckier you're going to get. But harder you work means you're going to get beat up too, and that work, and expect it and embrace it.
Yeah.
So Julia, what's Julia think about all this stuff?
So I think about all this stuff is that, honestly, I think I just absorbed every bit of information. And what I can say is that as someone going to MCC right now for business management, this podcast alone has taught me more than anything I will probably learn going there. I mean, I've already done a year, and then I've another year, or like I'll have another year, but I know this was just more beneficial and like for me than anything else, just listening to everything Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. And again, seeking shared experiences, in my opinion, Julie, are the most important thing for a young business leader like yourself, right? If you want to be great, just seek out shared experiences from people that you and your dad respect, right? That you think will be honest with you and transparent with you, because that's going to be how you learn the fastest. More than any education in school, you think about the people that are teaching these classes. Most often are not having experienced these things, right? So they're teaching from a book, they're teaching from maybe some other people's experiences, but not often from their own shared experiences. So it's not as good. I believe. It's
definitely just like vocabulary that I've learned. Like I took a business class and it was just teaching me vocabulary. So that didn't really do anything for me. And like, not only is this more just beneficial, just learning things, but it's more motivating and inspirational. So.
Yeah, it probably took me 15 years to understand how to spell that word entrepreneur, right? I mean, is the E before the U before the E over here? Man, there's a lot of letters there, right? But either way, I knew what the word meant before I knew how to spell it, and I love the concept, right, of building your own stuff. But again, for you, I'm confident that if you continually seek out people to share experiences with, you also want to come with something to say, hey, here's something I can do for that person, right? Because that's even better. And I think great people will share experiences with people that want to listen to them always, because they're not afraid of competition, really, if you're always growing. But I said, when I think about this, it's those people that I actually had some value that I could bring, not because they're selfish, right? But they're like, man, I got to help that kid out, right? As a kid, I can help that Rabine guy out. He brought me this opportunity, and I helped him a little bit, but man, I got to help him more. And so again, if in the back of your mind you want to be mentored or you want to learn from somebody, if you can bring them something that shows like that you care, or I want to do something for you, and I know I'm going to ask a few things of you if you can answer them for me, but I want to do this for you while we're talking, right? But whatever it is, and it can be something very small, but it's when you can go out of your way to serve first before you ask to be served, it works a lot better, right?
Right.
Well, one of the things I always say to her and my stepkids is, and you brought up sports. I mean, I played football and I passed up football scholarships. And so we have that in common. But the biggest thing that I found was to be, and I always tell my people, and I especially tell her, is be coachable. Because, the thing about mentors are, and I think you would agree with this, Gary, is when I see someone acting like a sponge, like they literally want to absorb everything I can talk about, I will just keep giving them information as fast as they can absorb it. But the minute I feel like they don't, the minute they treat me like I'm a bag of wind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to move on to the person that wants to hear what I'm saying. And I think that's the biggest value that I can say to her is, don't only listen to me. Listen to you, because I'm going to offer a unique perspective. I'm like reading one book, okay? If you listen to you, and it's one of my reasons I have the podcast, if you take an accumulation of people's minds, and I think we've gotten to a point in our society where we do not respect what our elders can pass down. You've learned nothing, because you don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel. There are people that have figured out a better way to do it. You can learn from it, and I hope you'll agree with that,
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. And I think, so when you talk about mentorship, right, the key thing I didn't understand early on is you don't want people to tell you how to do things. You just want them to share experiences, right?
Yes.
Once in a while you'll say, hey, what do you think I should do in this situation, right? And you're forcing them to kind of tell you what they should do, what they think you should do. You're better off saying, can you share experience with me that you had similar to this one, right? And how you felt about the decision you made in that experience, right? If you can do that, now you're not obligated to do what they're asking, what they're saying, what they're share, what they think. You're just asking their experience, so you make your own decision, right? And then there's no liability. When I say liability, no liability of guilt on their end, no liability on your end, right? It's just they're sharing experiences. And that's the best. When a mentor tells you what to do all the time, do this, hey, try that. And believe me, I'm guilty of this sometimes too. I think I really got the solution. I'm going to say, here's what you do. Julia, you got to do this. You got to try that. You got to meet this person, right? I'll do that sometimes, and that's wrong, right? I mean, you really need to say, hey, step back and say, Okay, no, wait, what's your experience? Can you tell me about, how you thought about that when it happened? And then you can learn from that and make your own decision. It's the best way to learn. It's the best way to be mentored or mentor. But I'll tell you, and when you went back to, more minds are better than one, my book that I'm writing a book right now. It's going to be on Ditch Digger Laws of Success. And it's going to be the first 40 episodes or 42. I've got 43 or 4 episodes now, but I got to figure out the number. But it's probably 40 episodes. I'll split into that. And what are the laws of success we've learned through those stories, right? And what are the common laws of success? And if you follow those common laws of success, your odds of being successful are going to be way better than otherwise. And so, and there's a book called The Laws of Success that was written in the turn of the century, actually in the 20s or 30s. It was written in 1930, 100 years ago now. And it's a great book of the titans of industry back then. And it's their stories of success. Well, one thing they talk about in this is they called it the mastermind. Okay, the mastermind was 2 or more people thinking together and 2 or more people meeting together over a common cause or a solution, right? That they're trying to figure out. And it was about I think it was Henry Ford, Firestone, maybe Vanderbilt, and Thomas Edison. And 3 or 4. It was only 3 or 4 initially that met on a weekly basis, I think it was. And they from that. Henry Ford became a much more innovative guy with Thomas Edison in his mastermind, right? And Firestone became a great entrepreneur because of the mind of his friend Ford and bouncing things off and sharing experiences, right? So the mastermind is just all about that. And I look at that today as forums, right? We build forums in YPO that I'm a part of, and they're awesome. You become very close to the 6 to 10 person, 12 person forums you build. And with True Mentors that you're a part of, Joe, we've done the same thing. We're building forums where we can as well. And man, it's amazing what you can get out of a group of people thinking together, sponging off each other, right? So when you have a challenge and you can put smart people in a room, it's a hell of a lot better than me if I'm an introvert, let's say, not wanting to talk to anybody, not wanting to share this experience of trying to figure out the solution. Now, especially when you have a brain as small as mine, it doesn't work very well. I mean, there's very intelligent people that think they can do it all on their own. And in some cases, they're super smart and they get a lot done, but nothing is comparable. Even the smartest mind in the world is comparable to 2 or 3 minds working together to solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
To bring different paradigms into the solution. So again, I back to so forums and masterminds, in my opinion, are very important, right? So more than one mind thinking together to solve problems is big, and if you can get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 people in a room that are all have the ambition to solve a problem, it's even better. I think you get much more than that. It might get to be too much and stuff like that. Like our Congress and Senate and our bureaucrats today, I think they have too many minds working on things and getting done. But either way, I think it's important. And then shared experiences again over everything else, and coming to the table if you're a mentor with not just benefits for that person if something you do for them, but also being prepared. As Joe, as you said, worst thing can happen is a mentor wants to help somebody out, and then the mentee doesn't take it very seriously. They're not prepared. They don't come with good questions and stuff they learned from the last meetings they've had and stuff like that. So.
Well, and I think what's as long as we're on the mentor-mentee conversation is, what's important to say is I am a mentor to some people, but I see myself as your mentee. Like, as I listen to you talk, you're somebody I look up to, and that's another thing that I think people have to recognize is you've never reached a point in your life where you can't still learn, and that's the other thing that I always want her to understand is that from the Wi-Fi
isn't set up on your Echo Dot.
My Echo Dot's telling me all of a sudden my Wi-Fi is not set up. Can you unplug that thing, Jules? Sorry, but we're always constantly learning, and I just want to say it's like, as we've been talking, I am writing notes of things that I see, and Julia's writing notes.
I've got a full page.
She has a full page, and that's what's really cool about podcasts. It's like you can unlike a book, book you can, to me, I can read to wind down, relax, but I can put a podcast on in my truck while I'm driving from place to place. Your podcast, I do it all the time, Gary. You know,
He does.
I do, actually, and I do it. And there's some days where you're having a rough day, and then I'll listen to one of your guests on your podcast, and it's like, it's almost like that podcast episode literally can fix a problem I'm having in my day. But that's how I know my ears are still open. You know, I'm still willing to learn. You know?
When you, in my opinion, when you stop seeking, seeking to be educated, again, I joke a lot that I am not very well educated academically, right? I barely made through high school, but I believe that's and people that are highly educated academically are awesome. God bless them, right? If they can have that and then keep the open mind to constantly feed themselves with education, whether it's through reading or it's through mentorship or whatever, they can be a double, triple threat, right? For me, it's constantly through communication and listening to stories, meeting people that I learn. And my mentors of yesterday, of 30, 40 years ago, are in their 80s, 70s, 80s, right? And they're still learning on a constant basis. They call me to ask me questions about what they think I'm knowledgeable about, right? And so they're always learning, right? And I look at Bernie Marcus and the amazing guy that he is, and is now his early 90s. The guy is got the spirit and the energy of a 40-year-old, and he's constantly learning, and he's constantly seeking out information, and he's a leader today, and in so many ways outside of Home Depot that he started years ago. And again, I've got Fran Houlihan, another friend of mine that I paved a couple of driveways for him. Realized he was very, very wealthy, and it turned out he was in manufacturing and invented a few things. And he got to be my friend. He's still my friend today. I think Fran's about 84 now, my buddy. And this guy I still talk to. I owe him a call right now, actually. And he calls me to ask me questions about things he knows I might have the answer for. And I still call him. We're buddies, right? So long term, right? My mentors are always learning, and that's who I want to be. I'm 57, but I feel like a kid still. When I'm 85, 90, if I live that long, right? 100, if I can live that long, I better still be seeking out information, trying to learn more. And I think that your mind constantly working and adding information, I believe keeps your body young as well. I see this in these people I'm talking about. So I met Clint Eastwood, and what a guy Clint Eastwood is, right? And boy, he is sharp as can be, and what a fun guy to talk to. And his mind is constantly working on building the next movie, the next story. He's a golfer, so he's got a great golf course he built. And we talk about, but he's so passionate about so many things. I think he's 86, 7 years old now, so passionate and so energized every day that he doesn't feel like he's 86 or 7 or whatever he is now, right? So that's what I want to be. So I want to constantly, be mentored off of people that have experienced different things than I have, so that I can gain enough knowledge about the next thing I'm doing, right?
Well, yeah, and I think when you love what you do, which is obvious that you do, I know I do.
I also do.
Julia also does. You want to wake up in the morning. I think there's so many people that are stuck doing things they don't want to do, and that in itself ages them, right? Because every day they wake up and they're like, I got to go and do this, and it starts to play with your psyche. I mean, for me, I always tell people, like, so many of my successes in business I dreamt about the night before, and I wake up, and I'm that weirdo that'll do like a memo. I'll wake up at 2:00 in the morning, and I'll be like, holy cow, that was a good idea, and I'll do a memo, but then I'll listen to it in the morning. I'm like, that was the dumbest idea I've ever had before, but like I am constantly, like, my brain, I'm so happy with where I am in life that I'm like, I'm living my best life. But it's because I am an entrepreneur. I love it, and you said you had a chip on your shoulder for kids in school. Mine was when I became a union electrician. I had the snow removal company. A lot of people, and you might not even know this, like, I was a union electrician, and I started my snow removal company when I did a side job for someone who turned into one of my mentors also.
And the union say you're not supposed to do that, dude. You're not
I know, right? I was, Gary, I've been breaking rules from the beginning, but as far as I should say not rules, you know, as far as like where people want to keep you in a bubble,
I know.
you know. But anyhow, long and short of that, the guys used to always be like, snowplow Joe, do you want to be an electrician or do you want to plow snow? You know, the whole time I was like, you guys love this job. I don't love it, but I learned a lot from that job. I learned how, like I said, you know, the way people treated people, the foreman that treated me right, the foreman that treated me wrong, the business owners, you know, associated electrical contractors. I worked for them. That was the last job I had before I went full boat over here. And I thought that was a great place to work for, you know, and it's funny to me. I remember standing there, they had a meeting, there were 90 people, and I thought, man, one day how awesome would it be for me to have a business where I'm the guy giving the 90-person meeting. And the other year, last year, we were doing our snow meeting, and Tanner was like, yeah, we have to have meetings over 4 days. And I said, why? And he's like, well, dude, we have 290 employees. Like, where do you think we're going to put them all? And Gary, it was last year. It's like so much has happened. I had the epiphany. I was like, holy cow, I have done what I wanted to do times 3. Like I am giving 90-person meetings, you know. And that's what's just amazing about it. And
so set that 1, 3, and 10-year goal, dude, and make sure that 10-year goal is lofty enough that it's not so easy next time. Don't be such a lightweight. Go after it, will you? And again, I think that when I say that, and I say it jokingly, right? But you know, visionary is to have a visionary is a big thing in a business, and sometimes it's the entrepreneur, often it is, but oftentimes that visionary isn't also the strategist, right? I mean, they're very often they're the vision. And this is my case. My vision has always been kind of crazy to other people. When they listen to my vision, they think I'm nuts. I've usually hit the vision that I set out. I usually hit, but my challenge is getting the whole team behind me over the years, and I'm better at that now than I used to be, or we are as a team. Because the visionary is me in some cases. Sometimes it's the CEO of the company that we're talking about that we have, but the key is to have the operational, the strategic plan, the operation to be aligned with that vision. And sometimes operational people will pull that vision down a little bit. And that's okay. Sometimes they'll actually push it up a little more if the visionary is a little less aggressive. So again, but you better get the team aligned, the operational minded people that aren't visionaries aligned with the visionary. Otherwise, it's not happening. It's going to be very tough for it to happen. Or if it happens, it happened very sloppily, right? So my thing is, you know, alignment and vision and strategy is huge, and not all entrepreneurs have both sides of the brain. I for one don't, right? I can do strategy and I can have fun with it for a little while, but I get bored with it fast, and I'm off to the next thing. I don't want to be stuck in operations too long, because just not where I thrive, right? So again, I think it's important to say, okay, vision is important, strategy and operations to align with it, really important, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I look at all of, you know, industries you and I are both in, and I see, you know, when you're talking about aligning vision with operations, and you talked about sometimes they pull away, I think it'd be safe to say, and you would agree, one of the things sometimes that keeps the vision in check is finding people, right? You know, and figuring out how you're going to duplicate. You know, anytime I've ever lost a customer, I've always said, like, if I could clone me, I likely would not have lost you. And they agree, you know. And when I look at all this automation that's coming out, you know, what you guys are doing with Sight and Pipe View, what I'm doing with robotic mowers and left-hand robotics, like one of the things you and I have to talk about even is the left-hand machine that snow blows 20 miles of sidewalk. You know, I look at these things as, you know, how can I how can I get to where I want to be and use the automation to fill those gaps, you know?
Yep.
And I think that's what minds like yours and like your mind and my mind, that's what we do, you know? So.
Yeah, I'm not sure, you know, where your core values are, but I think that's a big part of that, right? Aligning your core values, making sure the core values you have in place are ones that you live and die by, that you hire by, fire by, you award people by it, right?
Tasty catering episode, Gary. Core values. I listen to the podcast. We're aligned. Yep.
Yeah. So I think it's so important to have core values aligned, that you have team members that believe in them, right? and your industry is similar to mine, your core values, might not vary a lot from mine, but no more than 5, maybe 6 at the very most. If you can do it in 3 or 4 core values, way better off, right? So, I mean, I think that's very important to really take the time to understand what are the right core values for you in any industry, right? Any business that you're involved in. So,
your podcast, and then maybe, because I know you said you had to be off at a certain time, and this might be a good time to kind of wrap it in. But if you may not know this, but even on our website, we list our values on Automated Outdoors website. Good. And you're right. It's like, I knew for every company I want to build now, I start with the people like Julia identifying our core values. And our business cards now have a mission statement on them, so our customers understand what we're about. I think in the future, those are the things that will define the world-class organizations from the people that just do it. And it's about not only your people understanding those values, but in my opinion, the customer base also. Because it's a check and balance. The customers know, hey, if I use Rabine or Site or whatever company it's going to be, I know this is what he and his employees expect of themselves. So if I don't see it, I can call Gary. You said you like the feedback and say, hey, I think you're lacking value 6. Like something's going on this site. Maybe you want to take a look at it. So I learned a ton from that, and I'm already implementing it, So.
Yeah. I mean, it's right. So for us, if our customers our customers that use us more often and care about these things know our values, right? And so when it comes to safety, it's our first and foremost thing is ensure safety, right? We got to be safe in your industry, in my industry. If you're not safe, man, you're in trouble.
Your insurance rates are going to put you out of business. Yeah.
People can die, right? I mean, terrible things can happen. And by the way, if you're just selfish as a business leader, your insurance is a heck of a lot cheaper if your mod rate's lower, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? If you're selfish again, smart customers won't use you if your mod rate's too high.
Well, exactly. So, you can't get half of the bids if your mod's over 1.0. So
that's right. So safety is a huge thing, right? And then what do we want? We want accountable people. We want to drive accountability. That's our next thing that we care about is do we have accountable people that drive accountability? If somebody makes a mistake, do they fess up to it? Overall, our people do, our teammates do, right? So when I think accountability is a no-brainer. You can't blame other people for mistakes. You take account. If you're accountable, you're relieving the pain and anxiety of other teammates, especially if you're a leader, right? And then for us, it's what we mentioned earlier, work ethic. We want people to exude work ethic. If they're passionate about what they do, they're going to exude work ethic. If they're not going to, right? So passion is a big thing of mine. But if they don't exude work ethic in the industries that they're in and the customers we're serving, they're probably not a fit for us, right? And then respect everyone. We mentioned the golden rule, right? But that comes from that. Respect everyone, and if you don't respect everyone you're around, then we don't want you on our team. It's simple, it's easy, but not everybody focuses on it, and myself included. I will do something stupid and not show respect sometimes, and I hope that my teammates and anybody around me will call me out, right? And so the last thing for us is practice continuous improvement. If we have that's all about innovating, right? If every one of us is practicing continuous improvement, we're getting better. Whether a first day person on the job or it's somebody that's been with us for 30 years, if they're always striving to practice continuous improvement, they're not offended by that new thing we're doing. They're not offended by the new standard operating procedure we've created. They're not offended by trying something different, right? And if they are, we go to that core value and say, come on, man, you signed up for this. You're part of this team. This is our 5th core value. And if you don't care to improve, maybe this isn't the right place for you, right? Or maybe this isn't the right role you should be in. So again, I think those 5 core values sum up what we are, and it makes it really easy to talk about, right? And when things go wrong and there's a problem, it's easy to bring up one of these core values as the thing we get to look at and improve on, right? So.
Well, and it takes so much pressure off your middle management too, because now there's not good cop, bad cop. These are the values. I hired you by those values, and I'll let you go off those same values. Things become much easier to scale.
Exactly.
It makes a company more scalable. So.
Yep. Absolutely. And our
So-
slogan is still discover the difference.
Yes.
Discover the difference. We're going to.
I
Yeah.
have it started.
Yeah. So Julia started that.
I did.
Our slogan currently is automatically mowing its way into the future at AOS and even at Langton Group. So, so once again, we share, like Gary, our minds are so similar, and it is crazy that, you know, that to round this out with our guests, you know, Gary became my neighbor. I live on his beautiful golf course. Kind of upset I didn't have the opportunity to buy the damn thing when he did, because it's that awesome. I mean, it's seriously, talk about working hard and finding opportunity. He did. But then he moves a little bit away. I move pretty much same subdivision. So we're still, there's so many things we do alike that it makes me laugh, you know.
Yeah, we both bought houses that were overbuilt in Illinois, where the values have plummeted from high taxation, right?
Yeah.
And we've got great deals on homes. We have to put a little bit of money in to get them back to where they need to be, but great values in the long run.
Yeah.
As long as Illinois someday gets their stuff
together.
And
Yeah.
so my next stage of my life might be dedicated to a lot of that as well. You know, hopefully helping to renew the Republican Party in Illinois and bring it back to the state. And that's my next thing I'm involved in.
Yeah. Well, if you need any help with that, you let me know. So,
You got it.
all righty. Well, Gary, it was great having you. What's that?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you guys having me on, especially early on in your podcast history. So.
Yeah. You'll have to make sure you tune in, and maybe I'll once we get going with these, and I get to a point where I have 40 episodes or 42 like you do, I'll bring you back on, and you can talk about our lives move so fast. We will probably have already been growing, scaling new companies, and it'll probably make for an interesting, maybe yearly recap we should do.
Anytime.
Right.
As long as it's Julia, you know, asks me questions and beat me up
I'll ask him next time.
instead of your big bullying ass that you know.
So hold on. Now this is some good podcast stuff right here. I actually told her, like, you're going to have to ask some questions, and either you're going to have to do some takeaways, much like how you got with your podcast. Quentin does takeaways, and I was like, you're going to have to do some stuff. But I'm sure this is where I'm going to sound like a bully because I'm speaking for her, but she'll probably agree. She's probably thinking, I've literally heard the phone conversations in the truck between you and Gary. How the hell do you think I'm going to get a word in edgewise?
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was best to absorb the information. I saw very few opportunities to talk. Well, I mean, they're funny, but I figured you guys were just in the zone, so I let it be.
So, Julia, what are your major takeaways?
Okay, well, so I had to discover the difference every day, think about what you were doing, different for customers, you know. And then, to me, the one that stood out the most was pride kills all good things. I think that's the one that'll sit with me the most. So.
Good.
I mean, I had more, but those to me were like the biggest. Just two.
Awesome. You know, so for me, you know, a lot of fun things in my life I talk about. Some people, you know, my wife will say, "Oh, Gary, you know, people aren't going to believe all that because it's just crazy the stuff you've been through, right?" Or, "Oh, Gary, you sound like you're bragging because it's that." But there's a young man, Charlie Kirk, that's one of the most popular young conservative minds in the country today, in the world actually. He's got London, England. They want him to start a chapter of Turning Point USA there, but Charlie's my buddy, and I was with him when he first started his organization, and one of his the person that believed in him the most early on when he did, you know, he had a couple of us, right, that really loved his vision. But anyway, the same thing with Charlie. Charlie is one of the most intelligent young people, or people, forget about young people, one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. He's got a photographic memory. He's the greatest student of world governance I've ever seen. Understands every country in the world, where they've been and where they've been over the last couple thousand years, politically, government-wise, culturally, and all that, and also wars and everything. He also is a great student of the Bible. So anyway, what I told Charlie and his first advisor and the guy that discovered him, Bill Montgomery, is my good friend today, along with Charlie. What we got together, and I said, okay, you know, Bill, I said, the only thing I worry about Charlie is that pride kills him, right? He's so smart. He's such a sharp kid. He's going to get full of himself. He's going to have people tell him how great he is. And he has that every day now. Our president of our country is advised by Charlie, right? He loves the president of the country and conservatives across the country love what this organization, Turning Point USA, has done. Anyway, but again, with Charlie, I've said this to him consistently, almost every time I talk to him. Charlie, how's your pride level, dude? He goes, Gary, it's in check. I think it's in check. I said, okay, well, if I see him at an event, a big event with a few thousand people he's talking to, I'll watch him and I'll critique him on that subject. Charlie, a kid reached out to you walking by and you didn't really give him any attention, not even just a wink and sorry I'm running late or whatever, right? I said you got to treat everybody like you want to be treated, and pride can never you can never let pride get in the way. And so sure enough, so far, in my opinion, the kid's doing a great job.
I agree.
Bill reminds me. I think we probably wouldn't have to remind him anyway. He's that smart of a kid. But man, when I look at issues and challenges I've had in my life, it's pride that's caused the issues. And read the Bible or anything that has to do with God and faith, and pride also is spoken over many times, and how it's ruined great people and how it will ruin anybody, right? So I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, that was a good one. It's okay to have good chips on your shoulder. I like that one too. And then seek out all the lessons, even in the bad situations. So I don't know. Those are my main ones that I'll implement.
I think those are great takeaways, don't you, Gary?
Those are awesome. Thank you, Julie. I appreciate that. I appreciate you got something out of it anyway.
Yeah, I did for sure.
Not many people get much out of this brain, so I appreciate that.
Well, I think our listeners are going to get a ton out of this podcast, and I'm glad you were on, and I'm glad we are neighbors, and I'm glad we met. And I look back, really we've only been in our lives a few years now, but I'm glad we became neighbors, so we actually got to know each other. And otherwise, you would have just been a snow competitor, and we probably would have never talked. And one of the things to close it out too, which is crazy, is you have a high-level snow removal company, so do I, and we can function in a room together and help each other out. And that is one of my things that I want to get through with this podcast, especially in the landscape industry. None of the business leaders in my industry are willing to talk to each other because it's such low margin. People are constantly cutting each other's knees off. And I literally want to unite us and get us all talking and realize our worth as entrepreneurs. And it's just proof in the pudding that in a similar industry, but snow removal, two guys can sit and have a conversation for a couple hours now and never once talk about how we've competed with each other or taken any business away from each other.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, the challenge there is, you don't talk about pricing, you don't talk about these things, but you talk about good business. And when you talk about good business and what a good business looks like, and enterprise value, and what enterprise value looks like, if everybody in your industry, my industry, understand what enterprise value looks like, they would understand that you have to be a sustainable business that makes a good enough profit to get through tough times, right? A sustainable business that makes good enough profits and invests in the best innovation, right? And so that's what good business looks like. So if you just bring together groups in the industries, like you're saying, and you talk about those things, the industry gets better. It gets to be a better industry to be within, because if you strive to be great, you profit from being great. And if you don't, you probably don't. So I agree. I think you can talk with competitors and be friends with competitors. I'm friends with lots of them without breaching the real ethics, right? Where you're saying, hey man, I'm bidding this job. Are you bidding it too? Or hey, what's your price? Well, I'll give you this one. You give me that one, right? That's wrong. And
that's wrong. But aligning with people that have the same values.
Guess what?
Learn a lot from that.
Values, right? And enterprise value. You don't have a lot of enterprise value if your business is built on corruption. You don't have a lot of enterprise value if your business is built with no ethics and no real values, right? So again, if that's talked about in the groups you're saying, that stuff never happens, right?
Yeah. So anyways, well, Gary, great having you. I think this was awesome, and we got to do it again soon.
You got it, guys. Thanks a lot. And
one of these days, I'm going to be waiting for that invite on Ditch Digger. Just letting you know, I'm going to get there. I'll be a top 1%er, and I'm going to be on yours. So.
You got it. Well, you let me know what top 1% is. Is that 20 million? Is it 15 million?
Well, it depends. So I guess it depends on the business. We're definitely top 1% in the automation world right now. So I could probably sneak in as AOS right now. I'll get you some figures and you can make the decision.
All right, guys. Wait, no, good. You're right there. I'm sure you guys are awesome. I appreciate the time. You have a spectacular day. All right.
You too. Thanks, Gary.
And good luck on this podcast. You're going to kick butt.
All right, thank you.
Especially Julia on the
So hey, listen, I'll say this: the whole music idea. This is her. So I don't think we cleared it up. Sorry, Chris probably have to do a bunch of editing now. But basically, what we want to do with our podcast is we're going to make a playlist. Okay, so yours is your Ditch Digger CEO song. Okay, and we are going to take on Spotify and we're going to take an automating success playlist of all of the guests so that people can hear the music that inspires the guest. And then you have to understand that we're going to have business owners like you, and then we're also going to have engineers making the equipment. So one of the things I was talking to Chris about, who, by the way, people listen to this podcast, great producer of our podcast, is to start to see if the entrepreneurs have a little different spin on the music they listen to versus the engineers. And then at the end of the show, Julia and I take this podcast between us and we take a song off our father-daughter playlist to close out the podcast. So
I like it.
It's kind of like a little different flair, and I have to give her the credit for it because this is
awesome.
This is what happens in an organization when you have 19 and 20-year-old minds. They think of things that the 41-year-old mind doesn't think of. So
absolutely, no doubt about it. Multi-generational business is the most important thing. If you're all one generation, not going to work out too well. If you're all one, it comes from the same. Everybody comes from the same paradigm, right? The same upbringing, the same whatever. Doesn't work out so well, right? You need that diversity of thought, and I think you've got that. We've got that. And you need to continue to think about that, right?
Yeah, well, it's like having a 12-cylinder sports car versus a single-cylinder.
Exactly.
It's like everything just runs smoother, more harmonious. The more background and culture you bring into a company, the smoother everything rolls out. Marketing looks better. Sales is better because you can relate to everyone out there in the world. So
right. Oh, I agree.
So
all right, kids. Well,
great stuff, Gary.
Thanks to you guys today. Have a spectacular day, and thanks for having me on.
You too. Thanks a lot. Thanks for all your time.
Bye now. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.